Hey, Fitheads. Today we talk with Taylor Sittler. He's the head of research at Levels. So he's a physician entrepreneur in his past.
Dr. Taylor Sittler.
Oh, excuse me.
Doctor. Didn't go to med school to not be called doctor. That's for sure.
Good point. I just said Taylor. I was welcome, Taylor, my buddy. Well, we're friends now. We spent a whole hour together. Anyway, he expanded my mind, so I feel like we're bros. We talked about resilience, which is my new favorite word. And I feel like we talk about this all the time, but we never had this framing to make me go, what? Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Resilience. I mean, I suppose you'll have to stay tuned to find out. Yeah. No, but resilience is a way of measuring how quickly your body responds to stresses. Is that
right? And I always look at health as being the stress, right? I'm working out or I'm eating right. But then what about the idea of how quickly do you recover from that workout? Or, oh yeah, I'm healthy because I sleep 8 hours a night. What about when you don't get enough sleep? How resilient is your body anyway? And I've never thought about it like that. And now I can't stop thinking about it like that.
Yeah, it's amazing. It was like the perfect, it's one of those ones where you're like, wait, what? Huh? Wait, I knew. Wow, it's real. Holy moly. That was like my brain process the whole time.
Welcome to Total Fitheads.
Serious fitness for not so serious people.
Welcome, Taylor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Allie. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so we're going to be covering resilience on this one, Fitheads, although I think we need to take a step back. We've had some past Levels team on. If the Fitheads remember, we spoke with Dr. Casey Means, and even before that, Josh Clemente, which I think still is our most listened episode, by the way. So you've got a bar to beat.
Wow. That's
but yeah, I don't think we really dove into the idea of metabolic dysfunction. And yeah, can we just talk about that issue in America?
Sure. Yeah, no, totally. I think the way that we've been framing it, and I guess I'll start by saying, the metabolic health issue has been going on for a long time. And for those of you who are really interested in learning more about it, the Levels blog has a lot of great articles on everything from how metabolic health is related to, inflammation or chronic disease or all kinds of stuff, how it relates to what you eat or exercise. All that stuff is on the blog. So that's a really great place to go to get started. But I think from a very high level, really there's a crisis that's been building, and it's one of those slow burns that's been building over kind of 20 to 30 years or more. And so we're not super aware of it. But today, over 1 in 3 Americans, about 120 million people, have prediabetes or diabetes, and 9 of the 10 leading causes of death in the U.S. are related to metabolic dysfunction. 2/3 of the people with prediabetes don't know that they have it. And over half of them are going to have diabetes within 10 years. And so it's this massive problem that's hitting so many people that, and they're not aware of it. This crisis has been around for a long time. I first encountered it in med school as the obesity epidemic, which was named by the CDC so that they could have a hand in helping to address it, which is kind of an interesting framing of it. The first images I remember seeing were in some of my med school classes where it's almost like a political map that you see during election day when it starts to turn blue. And we were just watching the states become bluer and bluer and bluer as obesity was increasing across the country. So this isn't something that's new, but it's something that's been building for a long time. And it's something that it's really serious. Michael Pollan actually has a great perspective on it, and I think it's a good comparison. He covers this in Omnivore's Dilemma, which is already almost 20 years old. He compares the metabolic health crisis with alcoholism in the US in the 19th century. And if you can sort of transport yourself back there, this was a time when employers were expected to provide alcohol to their employees, and people went to work and drank. And I think at that time, on average, each citizen was drinking somewhere around like a fifth of alcohol every week or something like that. And that includes kids. I mean, it was nuts, right? And
poor HRV.
What's that?
It said they're poor HRV.
Oh yeah, no hose. I mean, not to mention they were drinking it at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So you can imagine the impact that it had on communities and families and stuff like that. And it really puts prohibition into a different light. And what's interesting, so beyond just the fact that this crisis is, I think, as serious as that crisis was in terms of people's health, it actually has common roots. So Michael Pollan attributes the alcohol crisis to an overproduction of corn, which really resulted in people just spinning up tons of gins to produce corn whiskey. And the current crisis is sort of similar. I mean, overproduction of corn is now subsidized by the government. We fractionate corn into 100 different substances, which are put into a ton of different foods. The most villainized one is high fructose corn syrup. But we have, we also have processed foods of all kinds, you have basically high saturated fat levels and a whole bunch of processed foods. And we drink a ton of calories today in ways that we couldn't even 20, 30 years ago. So it's just overproduction of food is leading to this massive obesity epidemic. And we're kind of eating in ways that evolutionarily we never have in the past. I'd say there are two other things that are kind of contributing to this. If overproduction is sort of the primary thing, then the secondary things that really enable the metabolic crisis is the lack of exercise in our modern environment. I mean, you guys are sort of the exception. I mean, I see the tank top, and you guys talk about this every week.
I am sitting on a couch though.
But yeah, I mean, we should be actually walking while we're doing this podcast, right? Rather than sitting. And you even see that Halo, for instance, has started docking people time if they sit for more than 8 hours a day, because it's not good for you. Right. You know how every one of those fitness trackers has like a point system that they use, like Apple, Oura Ring. They all have a point system. Yeah. And they're starting to dock you when you sit too much. So it's that sitting and that lack of exercise that we've sort of built that into modern life. And then the last piece of it is really the stress that we've sort of heaped on top of that, the chronic stress that we talk about and that people feel, and really that the pandemic has exacerbated, I think, in a way that we didn't see before. So, we have this confluence of events that's really leading to this crisis that, honestly, most of us are going to suffer from in our lifetimes if we're not careful.
Yeah, it's hard to escape. You say that, we're nice and fit and healthy people, but honestly, if I'm not working out, I am here. And that is definitely not good for my body or how it should be functioning,
Well, and I think it's also, it's overproduction of food, and it's also overproduction of crappy food that's easy to get and cheap. And I'm just out. I need something, whatever. I'll just grab a bag of chips or whatever at the gas station. It's just, everything is so convenient.
Yeah, you're right.
That's like almost been weaponized, at least for me. I know that's my biggest sort of Achilles heel.
Yeah. No, it's all there, right? The fruit and vegetable aisles are on the side, right? The middle aisles are the chips, the drinks, the sodas. That's the stuff you see when you walk into the store.
Yeah.
So we're set up to fail. Like everything about my environment is saying I'm gonna have metabolic health problems. How do we get out of it?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think the roots of this are old and are in kind of government subsidies, businesses, lack of understanding of the science. I think the biggest thing you can do is to, because it's so hard to change these massive systems, the biggest thing you can do is just start monitoring it and change the way that we respond to our environment. And it's really looking at that. We're just beginning to get to the point where we have the technology to be able to look quantitatively at how your body responds to the environment and how that relates to your health. I would say continuous glucose monitoring is really one of the first advances that allows you to see in real time how your body is responding. And it's the first time that we've been able to look at diagnostics or any kind of what we call biomarkers in real time, which kind of changes the game. It's a different time scale. It's a different way of thinking about it. And it enables us to make changes in our behavior in ways that were hard to assess previously. So what Levels is doing, I think, is new. And, there are obviously other companies out there doing that too. But what we're really entering is a period where we can we can really get a sense of how our behaviors are impacting our bodies. I almost think of it as a mirror that we get back, starting with glucose monitoring. And the way that we're thinking about this is in terms of when you think about how your body responds to its environment, that's sort of resilience. Resilience, I would define as it's how your body prepares for and recovers from activities that you take on, whether it's going to the gym and exercising. Is it running for a mile? Is it when you get sick? How does your body respond? How does it deal with the oncoming issues, and then how does it recover afterwards? When you go to let's say you're working all night. One night you don't sleep. How does it recover afterwards? And we can now look at starting with glucose. We can look at the markers that your body has and see how it's responding in real time. And that gives us a sense for how well you're doing. A good example of this that's already in the sort of common sphere is heart rate variability. So you guys are familiar with Whoop, I'm sure, right? Yeah, there you go.
Familiar.
Yeah, I got one too.
Hey, great color choice.
So heart rate variability is really what they're measuring is heart rate, right? And what we see is that your response to the different activities that you undergo determines how fit you are. If your body, let's say you decide to go for a run, or you decide you jump into the water, you're going to dive down. Any changes in activity that you undergo, your body kind of preps for stuff. And how quickly your heart rate changes as you start to do a new activity, it's actually a pretty good sign of how fit you are. So this heart rate variability, which is your body's ability to adapt in real time, is directly related to your health. Whoop really looks more at your recovery. So they have the recovery score and all of that. There's a preparation for activities as well. And actually Metabolism is a great example of that. So there's and maybe, I can get a little bit into what metabolic health is, what is metabolism, and how does that work?
Please dive in. We have time. Yes.
And feel free to, interrupt me at any point. But basically, metabolism is this, it happens, it's both a a way for your cells to interact, and this big kind of cascade of events that your body uses to prepare for food that's coming, as well as a set of interactions that happens in the cell. So our bodies are made of about 50 trillion cells, and each of them, of course, needs energy to function. You start by eating food. That food's converted to energy. Generally, the two main sources that your body, the currencies that it uses, are glucose and triglycerides, right? We know both of those. Those are released into the bloodstream, and and they're actually controlled at a fairly narrow range. So that all of the cells in your body can continue to metabolize things. And each one of those 50 trillion cells then has to take those in and use those for energy inside, right? That gets turned into ATP by your mitochondria. So in order to keep those substances at a reasonable level, you have this incredible cascade of basically signals that get sent back and forth between your muscle, your liver, and your fat predominantly. And this dance starts from the time that food touches your mouth. So, I'm sure you all have talked about the sugar response, or like the parasympathetic response when you salivate, or when you start thinking about food. Your body is already preparing for metabolism even before it happens. And then once the food hits your mouth,
which is why I'm convinced watching the Food Network is actually bad for you, because it sets that off in motion without actually eating, based on my scientific research.
Yeah. If you're starting to salivate, that's what's happening. Your body's getting ready. Although if you watch the Food Network regularly, your body probably has it figured out. That's the other thing, is your body's pretty good at learning. So probably the first time you watched the Food Network, it was like, oh, you're probably like dripping a little bit to the left. But then, by the fifth time, your body's like, oh, I know. She's just watching the Food Network. She's not
adapted to television.
It's like, but it's really interesting. I mean, there's this allostasis concept that's been out there for a little while that, and I think we see that both on a cellular and on a sort of whole organ or whole body systems level, where your body really it's constantly doing supply chain management. It's constantly prepping for your next activity. And, when we talk about glucose response, or, the insulin release, or all of those things, that's that choreography that's going on. And the way that we eat really pushes our metabolism to its limits. And, when we talk about insulin resistance, or when we talk about glucose spiking after dinner, that's because you've been eating so much for so long that your body is kind of reaching the limits of how well that choreographed dance can work. And when you get insulin resistance, your muscles are basically saying, oh man, you've been eating so much sugar for so long. We're just going to leave that sugar level higher. We're not going to take that extra glucose into our cells. We're just going to leave it out there, because every single day you've been drinking a couple of Cokes and eating a couple bags of chips. And frankly, it's been here for so long, it's just not worth our time to take it in. I know you're going to spike it back up there again. And that's what starts to happen, and where the system starts to break down is, we're kind of testing the limits of what we can do, with the physiology that we have. Evolutionarily, we went through long periods of time where people didn't eat anything, right? I mean, for a couple of days at least, folks would be foraging for food, or you might have to go through the desert, or through some uncharted area where you didn't find food. So our ancestors spent a lot of time not eating, whereas I think, in modern America, if you're awake and you've spent more than 3 hours without eating anything, it's pretty abnormal, right? I mean, people kind of freak out when they start to get hungry. So it's a very different existence than what we've had traditionally. And that is kind of pushing our metabolism and that choreographed dance to its limits has a real impact over time. And the way resilience is related to that is when we can actually start to measure now how your body is responding to the different things that you're eating and taking into your system. And we can start to put you on the health map as far as how that resilience is doing. So that's that's the concept. And that's where I think Levels is headed.
Yeah, it's an interesting framing of this. It's definitely expanded my mind, because I'm sitting here thinking like, health is not having Cokes, right? Okay, that makes sense. But this is a way of looking at it like, if you do have a Coke, can your body handle it better because you've done so well at not having Cokes, right? Does that make sense? Am I?
Yeah, kind of. Or is your behavior in general are you doing well enough that you can handle a Coke anytime you have one? Right. So what we can do is basically start to do a spot check by giving you a Coke or by having you run a mile or whatever. And in fact, the medical system already does this to some extent. I don't know if you've heard of an oral glucose tolerance test, an OGTT, but that's basically having a couple of Cokes.
Sort of did a fake one using jelly beans on my channel. So yes, I've tested this out.
How did it go?
I mean, it was uncomfortable emotionally and physically because I'd already been wearing Levels for over a year. And then the idea, after learning all of that, to just eat a bunch of jelly beans and have to sit there. Oh, that was rough.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so yes, traditional medicine is sort of doing this, right, with that kind of test. You were saying,
yeah,
like,
it's not too out of character, but I don't think medicine has really embraced this idea of resilience yet. It's not something that certainly doctors are talking about. But if you think about how best to prevent yourself from really getting sick, taking these measurements and understanding how your body responds to these different demands can really impact how sick you get over the long term.
Yeah, but I think it's kind of that's certainly a new framing. Maybe it's not a new idea, but it's a very new framing. I think people, when they get sick, they're like, oh, I'm sick. I guess I'll get better. Hopefully, doctor said it's in a couple of days, but I don't know. I guess and I don't think it's not a I don't know. It's not a common thing for people to be like, oh, how fast are you getting better?
Right.
and can I train that? I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, the cool thing is there's pretty good evidence that you can. I mean, and I think, WHOOP and heart rate variability is actually a pretty good precursor for this kind of thing. People have found that their heart rate variability improves quite a bit with training. We're also seeing that, one of the things I like to focus on is for metabolism is fasting. So one way to get your body, if your resilience is flagging, right? If you've been eating a bunch of chips and drinking a bunch of Coke, just giving your body a little bit of a metabolic rest can help to reset that signaling system. And what I found personally for, I actually do Levels in kind of 2 or 4 week chunks. So I'll optimize for a little bit and then I'll take it off, and then I'll optimize for a little bit and then I'll take it off. And I find if I usually when I put the sensor on at the beginning, there's a little bit of fluctuation, and some of that's calibration, but really it's just I haven't been paying attention to my glucose for a month or two, and so it's up. And if I do a couple of 16-hour fasts, it just levels it right down. It just, it's like clockwork, goes back to between like 70 and 110. And as long as I don't do anything crazy, jelly beans aside,
for science,
it works pretty well, So there are these things that you can do to kind of improve your resilience pretty quickly. And we're still learning what those are, but we know that they exist across diet and exercise and stress management, and some of the going back to the crisis and handling the crisis. If what we're dealing with is overproduction of food, engineering exercise out of our environment and chronic stress, then by monitoring those things and how we respond, we can actually save ourselves a lot of pain later on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you hear that, Max? Fasting?
I've heard of fasting. I know what it is.
I just keep bringing on guests to convince him that it's great. I'm a big fan and he's still a skeptic. Well, a part of that is that you fast and you're like, I think this is working. But then, like you said, with levels, you can see it working. There's that immediate feedback.
Yeah, that's what we're really going for, is to try and figure out what is it that we have to measure so that we can give people a mirror, right? So that they can see how their behavior is impacting their health. Levels there's one of the blog posts is called The Levels Theory of Behavior Change. And it's basically about interoception, which is how you feel about. Oh, you guys. All right, great.
No. I am a nerd and have already dove into this, but please tell the fit heads and Max.
Yeah. So one way to define interoception is basically how you feel about yourself, how you feel about things are. It's your innate sense of how things are going. And we can enhance that with this, right now it's continuous glucose monitoring. We hope to be able to expand that to other substances in the future. And that gives you a better sense for how things are going, and allows you to then update your behavior. Because if you're not getting feedback, humans are amazing optimizing machines. We're good at taking something, getting feedback on it, optimizing it, making it better. We do those cycles all day long. But if you're not getting the feedback, it's hard to change. So the first step is really to give that feedback and to enhance your sense of interoception. That then helps people be more accountable for what's going on, because they can see the objective changes. It's not like, oh, what did I eat last night? Or when did I stop eating? Or did I really have 3 drinks? No, I just had 1 drink, right? Our memory is very selective about those things. So it really helps, increase that accountability, creates that closed loop. And then that, I think, leads to a better sense of control. And I think that's what gets people really excited about this, is they feel like they have a better sense of control over their lives. And that feeling, we have found in research, is super important to enable people to change. How much control you feel over your life directly translates into how much control you have over your life. So it's that's the overview of how we think about behavior change. And but back to fasting. I mean, you can use levels to check it out. There are other things you can do too. You don't have to just be into fasting in order to improve your glucose levels. I think Casey has a whole different view on what diet you need to maintain, how you can, she talks about micronutrients, and I think there are different ways to approach it depending on what you're excited about or what you don't like.
Fine, Max, do what you want. Just take a walk while you're drinking the Coke. Honestly, it would make a huge difference.
Yeah.
What don't you like about fasting?
He doesn't like how smug I am about it.
First of all, Allie's only mentioned it about 4,000 times. She talks about that. And frankly, I'm surprised we've gotten this far in without her mentioning that she's vegan now. So, just everything that Allie says is just a reminder of how great she is, which is great.
Also CrossFit. Okay, I'm sorry.
Sometimes you forget, you know what I mean? I guess I always sort of felt like if something, I like listening to my body. If I'm hungry, I eat a little bit. If I'm, antsy, I get up and go for a walk. If I'm tired, I go to sleep. And so much of my life now has all these other things that are tricking me into not feeling that way. Like I'm watching TV and I'm not tired, but I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I should be tired. There's all these other tricks. Mm. So I really feel like if my body's telling me something, I should probably listen. And also I just don't like dieting. I don't like it at all. It's no fun.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Dieting is definitely not fun. Yeah, no. I hear everything you're saying. You already have an innate sense of what's going on, right? And I think in general, it is important to listen to that. What's the other thing you mentioned that's really important is that in modern life, it's important to check in and make sure you're not being tricked, either by the TV or by the foods that we put out there are almost designed to trick us in some sense. Like, high fructose corn syrup, for instance, doesn't spike the same neural receptors in the brain as sugar does. And so you don't get that same level of satiety after you've eaten something with high fructose corn syrup in it. And so the tricks that the body has developed over, evolutionary time don't work anymore with some of the food that we eat and some of the things we do. And I think that's why levels and things like it are so important, because sometimes your interoception works and sometimes it doesn't. And listening to it is critical. Like what else are you going to do if you don't listen to that? Right. Yeah. I guess for me, so I'm going to try to sell fasting here for a minute. And that's because fasting for me is a way to not have to watch what I eat. Instead, I just watch when I eat it. And that for me feels better than trying to always be eating the right thing. So if I want to have a croissant or I want to have a bowl of ice cream, I'll generally have it. Right. And I trade that for not eating for 16 or 18 hours or something like that. Right. Now half that time I'm sleeping, but it's, I think with these dieting things and with changing your behaviors, it's all about finding the thing that you can live with, because if all you're doing is optimizing your life, it's probably not going to be too much fun. I'm actually staying out here with some cousins, and I was telling him that I was fasting today, and he was like, yeah, it's really too bad that you don't eat anything in the morning, because they have amazing bakeries right here. And you're not going to get a croissant if you don't eat anything. And I was like, well, I don't have to fast every day. Right. If I get 5 out of 7 days, that's good. I'm good. Yeah. Right. I think it's all about actually Michael Pollan does a great job of, he sums it up in Defense of Food. What is it? Eat food, mostly plants, not too much. Right. There you go.
That's good. Perfect.
So yeah.
I mean, you're saying the food is almost designed to trick us. It's not almost designed. It is literally designed. I have documents on designing Doritos so that you are not satisfied and you eat more Doritos. So I guess my argument is that I was trying to take my internal signals, and this may be a little bit of a tangent, but then I found out I had really high cholesterol. And so I can't go by the fact that I feel great, and even my numbers are going up on my lifts and whatever, because I needed that outside signaling to say, hey, pay attention to this, what you were missing. And that's how I feel about levels too, right? It's this hidden information that helps me then see it happening and then connect that to the feeling, instead of trusting just that sitting on the couch eating chips feels good.
100%. Yeah.
So Max is going to fast now. I can see it on his face.
I'm already fixing my posture. Jesus Louis.
And a part of this too, what you're talking about, that feedback loop, without that, I think that's what contributes to what we were talking about way in the beginning, the lack of understanding of the science, right? So if we're all just guessing, then I have some dude on Instagram telling me that bananas are good for me, but he doesn't really know that about himself, let alone about for my individualized body. So I appreciate, that Levels is debunking that all of that miscommunication and misunderstanding of science.
Yeah, that's one of our main goals, really, is to give people an accurate mirror, right? It's to give people that feedback in a way that matters. I think there are a couple of things out there, mostly due to diets and marketing, that are wrong. One of them is that one diet works for everybody, right? Just because it works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. There are diets that work for larger numbers of people, but generally there are individual foods that can really mess up individual folks. Like for me, it's the Barbara's oat checks, right? They're like super heart healthy, and they've got, I thought I had done my homework when I picked them. And then I put on my levels and I was like, what the heck? I was up at like 175 after like half a bowl of cereal. And I was like, what the hell is going on,
Barbara? She's been lying to you.
Yeah, Barbara tricked me.
There's a heart on the box.
Yeah.
I did my research.
Yeah. So having that insight is big. And I think, so the first thing is that, not one diet will not be right for everybody. The second one is that there's, I think, yeah, to your point, so many people, like, I love the fact that, wasn't it Atkins who ended up dying of a heart attack? And like, the folks who like, that really try to purvey these different diets often have an agenda behind what they're doing. And I think that's what this can really cut through is, is this working for you or not? And as we understand how more and more about this kind of the way that your body prepares for things and the signaling cascades and the whole symphony of things that's going on, the more we'll be able to tell you about whether your diet, your exercise, your stress level, your like I would love to be able to do a test with Headspace and see if it's actually helping with anybody, right? Mm. Is it actually improving people's stress levels or not? I think it is. It's pretty popular.
Or am I stressed out because I'm going to mess up my Headspace streak?
There you go. Yeah, exactly.
We got to do this.
And so I think that's really what we're about, is it's providing that objective feedback to help people make the right decisions.
Well, I think it's feedback, and it's also, you sort of touched on this earlier, but it is worth touching it again, is, these stupid wearables, they do remind you something. You strap the levels on and then, okay, great. So for these 2 weeks, it's it's like, it is a good reminder whether or not it's, or whether or not you're super focused in all the time. This will really like, you reach for the thing, you reach for a bag of chips, you see your Oura ring and you're like, maybe I won't, that's a good indicator.
Yeah. That level of accountability is solid.
Right. It's interesting that you wear it like in phases. Do you feel almost like it's giving your body a reset to stop worrying about it? Or is that like, what is your tactic there?
Well, I think it's, and I haven't, by no means is this like a really well thought through decision. I think it's just that I don't want to be in optimizing mode all the time. Mm-hmm. Right. I feel like I want to check in periodically and make sure things are good. If they're not, I'll wear it for a longer period of time until I get back into a good place. But, I don't necessarily want to have to check in all the time every single day. And I know, for instance, there are times like, I'm not a huge jelly bean fan, but I'll have some ice cream, right? Yeah. And I know that occasionally my glucose is going to spike. I had some, my cousin made some really good pasta last night. And I was like, it's 9:30 in Barcelona. Like, I probably shouldn't be eating this, but I'm going to do it anyway. And once I put the levels on next week, I'm not going to do that. Right. I'm going to make sure that my time in range is reasonable, that I'm not spiking into the 130s. And if if I do put it on and I find that things are out of whack, then it'll make me cut down on this kind of thing. So I think it's a heuristic for me to avoid having to do it every single day, and still feel like I'm, being honest and managing my health.
Yeah. And for me, that ties back into the idea of resilience, where it's not like, oh, I'm healthy because I eat this way. It's like, if you do have a digression or decide to have that pasta, your body will handle it better, right? You're training yourself to not just be completely out of whack all the time, which, yeah. And even from a workout standpoint, I think working out is destroying my body and then I'll be strong. But the idea of coming back from that as quickly as possible so I can work out again is not, I need to put that in my brain. I need to think about resilience in terms of workouts too, right? I feel
totally. I mean,
like
the
really
adaptation that your body goes through is very much resilient, right? When you work out and when you destroy your body, it builds back not just to the level it was before, but it generally builds back stronger so that you can go harder next time.
Right.
There are limits, of course. But
super compensation. But the idea then of getting your body to super compensate faster is something I've never thought about. And now it's all I can think about.
Yeah. Well, and there are probably, I mean, I used to do it was a little while ago, but I used to do triathlons, and I found that that I was better able to improve my endurance if I took a few days off during the week. It's not like I could actually work out more often and make it go a lot faster. But there might be, there honestly might be ways that we can improve recovery. Definitely, I think, from what I know now, I would think if I was eating better, I would have had a faster recovery, right? Mm-hmm. Eating better, probably drinking a little less alcohol. I would have recovered faster.
Well, it's not the 19th century.
You never know.
That's true.
Levels isn't providing it at work for you.
Oh, we could try it, right? That's the fun thing, is we could actually do a test. Slap on your levels, work out really hard for a week with and without a couple of drinks. What was it that we used to do? It was like 24 beers, 24 miles, 24 hours.
Oh my gosh.
What on earth?
First of all, we do not condone drinking and driving, because there's no way you should drive 24 miles. Or do you mean running 24 miles?
Not driving. All right. Yeah. Let's back off this a little bit. Okay. So
Max is just assuming he can never do. Wow. 24 miles of running. Running.
Yeah. No, not driving. So first of all, definitely not. This was before I went to medical school. This is not medically good.
But technically that's 1 beer an hour. So you're sober. Unless you finish in, a normal 24-mile time, which would be 2 hours for you.
Well, exactly. But it's, anyway, we don't.
Well, because Max and I have done several beer miles, but we've never heard of this challenge, which is frustrating that I'm now clearly going to have to do it. No, okay, yeah. But like, go ahead.
What about alcohol? Can you train your body to be more resilient? Can you, because Allie and I actually sort of anecdotally talk about this. We're like, sometimes if you, for example, get a really bad hangover, I in my mind, I think it's like, well, I haven't really had any drinks in weeks or months or whatever. And so now it's like really slamming me. Is that a thing?
Yeah. I think the jury's out, but people talk about developing a tolerance, right? Which is one way to think about it. Another way to think about it is, and this is almost universal, for people who drink heavily at 20 or 25 bounce back way faster than they do at 45 or 50. Mm-hmm. Right. And what that tells you is that the 45 or the 50-year-old just has a less resilient metabolism and liver. right? The liver is just not processing alcohol as quickly, and the brain is reacting more, and they're more of this, the sort of middle compounds. So alcohol goes from alcohol to this thing called acetaldehyde. And then, ultimately it gets excreted from the body. But that middle compound is really what causes all the pain that's associated with it. There's even a drug actually that inhibits the enzyme that makes that last step. So acetaldehyde, it's called disulfiram, and that's what causes that middle compound to build up in your body. So yeah, I mean, I think there are very real ways that you can increase or decrease your resilience to alcohol.
Amazing.
Fascinating. Huh. Well, yeah, we should just work on that, I guess. I don't know. Max and I talked about this with even like fast food, where I eat so clean that a burger would wreck me. Where I imagine if I was just having burgers every day, I'd be able to handle it, but I guess I'd probably die very much sooner.
Yeah. Well, some of that. Some of it, so some of it is that your interoception is probably functioning better, right? A little bit of it is certainly how is feeling better, but some of resilience is also feeling badly when something bad has happened, right? So when you're eating burgers all the time, you're constantly, you're hammering your head. It's like you're hammering your liver, and it might not.
Your baseline's here versus here.
Exactly.
Huh.
Exactly. It's kind of like, did you guys see Super Size Me? I know it's old at this point, but
I'm familiar with the concept. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, 2 weeks of McDonald's and his liver went into he was having liver failure. Full on. So. Yeah, eating hamburgers every day literally will kill you.
Well, McDonald's hamburgers.
Yeah, McDonald's hamburgers. That's right. Let's be fair.
Well, you did mention expanding to other substances. Can we discuss that and where levels may be headed? And when can I wake up and look at a continuous graph of my cortisol, please?
Yeah. So, I think I think ultimately Levels wants to be able to help you. It's first helping you understand how food affects your health. And there are a few other substances we can measure to really impact that. I think the biggest thing that we're missing right now is the triglyceride metabolism. So we're really only capturing half of metabolism, and that's around your glucose. Remember, we said that triglycerides are kind of the other half of how your body responds. Mm-hmm. And so there are things that you can do right now to gain your CGM. And alcohol is actually one of them. If you drink alcohol, you shunt your metabolism over to triglycerides, and your glucose won't spike. But that's not necessarily healthy for you, right? That's actually bad. So we need to add a couple more. I shouldn't be drinking
canola oil for the past year.
Yes.
Shots.
Good idea.
But yeah.
So there's that, and then I think. There are a number of other things. Cortisol is definitely high on the list because that's related to stress and sleep, right? You have this diurnal cortisol cycle that goes up and down it spikes in the morning. And so how long it's spiking and how it trails off tells you a lot about how people are sleeping and how they're recovering. And also maybe your cortisol spikes every other week when you talk to your mother-in-law. I don't know, right? You can start to get a sense for the things that are in your kind of orbit or in your regular routine that are causing you to stress out. Mm-hmm. And how quickly your cortisol level returns to normal after a stressful event also tells you a lot. That tells you how stressed out you are. So cortisol is actually a really big one. There are things like oxytocin, which is related to your sense of community and social connection. And we know that that's a major contributor to either longevity or early death, right? Folks who are lonely die younger, unfortunately.
Like a joy graph that also tells you how long you're going to live. Yes, I want that. Put that needle in me. Where's that filament?
Yeah, so there are a number of different things that we're going to probably measure over time. And, we would love, I think we're trying to figure out now who to work with to do that, how to build those things. Companies have tried to measure virtually everything, but they've done so sort of with varying levels of success, and I would say have done it some have done it well, some have not. So I think we're charting a path through that at the moment. But we're definitely very interested in expanding that mirror that can help you understand how your immediate surroundings and your behavior is impacting you.
You mentioned earlier that it's resilience, but it's why don't you call it adaptability? And is there a way to measure it seems like everyone's measuring the recovery, the ramp down, how fast you're bounce back from being up all night, or how fast you bounce back from having a crappy meal or alcohol or whatever. What about the ramp up? Is there any sort of what's going on that side? Doesn't seem like I hear about that too often.
Well, some of the same things can be really helpful. So, your insulin and glucagon, and there's a whole hormone cascade related to metabolism as a starting point that can be triggered even before you have food, right? There's also, I think, when you think about muscle recovery, there's preparation for new activities. So the heart rate variability is an example here where as you start to think about doing something, or as you start to move, your heart rate changes, and how quickly it changes tells you a lot early on in exercise. So there are things that your body does to prepare for activities that can tell you a lot. Also, I think just where and how your fat is stored, as an example. So we talked about the three major parts to this signaling, the sort of choreographed dance of metabolism being liver, muscle, and fat. Folks that have a lot of fat in their omentum inside the visceral fat that folks have tends to be more dangerous than the fat that sits on the outside, than your love handles. And that's a way that your body is preparing for things, right? So where the fat sits can tell you a lot. So there are definitely things that we know and are looking into that we can use to help on the preparation side for resilience. And the reason that we have gone with resilience as a word rather than adaptability, I think, is for the positive. I think resilience connotes a positive movement, right? If you are resilient, you are healthy, you are moving in the right direction, you're able to withstand a lot of different stressors on your body. And I think that's what a lot of people want. When people think about health, what they really want is resilience. And what we're looking for is a way to talk about it, but also to measure that quantitatively. Most metrics that are out there right now, most biomarkers or things that are developed by the medical industry are done for disease, right? HbA1c or cholesterol. They only tell you if something bad is going to happen. They don't tell you if something good is going to happen. And so this is really the opposite. This is trying to move in a good direction and developing quantitative markers to help people understand that.
Yeah, love it. And excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, me too.
Well, thank you so much. This has been very illuminating.
Yeah, no, it was my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. And we did talk about the Levels blog a bit. Where can the Fitheads go find more about all of this?
Yeah, it's the blog is at I didn't put it in here. Sorry, I'm gonna have to read off the address in just a second.
Well, the thing about Levels in general, it's levelshealth.com, right? And then
I think it's just blog, but it's at the bottom of the talking points here. Yeah, levelshealth.com/blog. That's what it is.
There you go.
You can tell I'm still new.
You did a great job. We're still new on this podcast too. You're only the 107th episode. So
Lucky Lucky number 107.
I'm feeling lucky.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, this was great. Thanks for chatting with me. And looking forward to hearing it come out.
Heck yeah. And thank
Really
you to the
appreciate
Fit
it.
Heads. If you can rate and review on Apple Podcasts, that helps us out a whole lot. And we will see you next week.